My name is Roderick.
So I can introduce you.
Yeah, Roderick. Roderick Z. Um, I have a couple of spiritual names I use, but I just go by
So,
Roderick.
so brothers, sisters, and motherfuckers, today we are unfortunately filmed without our co-host Joseph Zugerty because Joseph has some like issues he has to deal with. But we are having for you a special guest, Roderick Z, Thelemite, Black Magician, and Transcendental Motherfucker. I was at his show last week, and his show is good. You need to check it out. It was a really good show with a really good guy, and he was such a good guy that I had to put him on my show. So, Roderick, me and Joseph Dugetry wanted to interview you, but Joseph has some job. Maybe we will make another interview with you with Joseph also, because I have a co-host, as you know already, but he is like busy today.
I'm
So,
down, man. I'll do it.
yeah. Motherfucker, you are so cooperative. I like people who I don't have to convince to be multiple times on a show. But can you introduce yourself to us? You know, how you started with magic, what you do, what you fuck around with magically, and yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm Roderick Z. I host a podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and Anchor. It's called The Far Side of Midnight. And I call it the far side of midnight because when we are talking about these subjects, we are going on the far side of everything, So black magic, white magic, Thelema. I got into this path about 10 years ago, actually a little bit more than 10 years ago, about 2007. And my path back then is not quite like my path now. So the path that I do now is I just practice Crowley system of Thelema. I practice meditation, astral magic, astral work, some dark magic, of course, Solomonic magic, Goetic magic, like a little bit of Enochian. I have some Enochian, but I'm not that experienced with it. But anyway, yeah, I got into this magic about a little over 10 years ago, and yeah, that's what I could say about that, man. I work with all different spirits, some angels, demonic spirits. Mostly the demonic spirits is mainly for is psychological uses, a way of going into my dark side, managing myself. I fuck with all of that.
So can
What
I
else?
ask you like a question? Because we tried to cover this on your show, but like you kind of let me to talk more because I was kind of guest on that show, which is logical. But this time you are guest on my show, so I kind of. So what's the Lima is all about, man? Because I read Book of the Law and it was like good for me, really powerful, really potent. It was as if you are reading prolonged spiritual orgasm. That was like my experience of Book of the Law. Like a really good book. But here's the thing, when I checked other Thelema literature, I was like, it was so confusing. And it was like so convoluted and purposefully mysterious. And then I met some people who were into Thelema, and everybody who is into Thelema is like, I know, they are like purposefully convoluted and mysterious, and they speak in like riddles, which are not like symbolic or riddles when you interpret the dream, right? But
Yeah.
it's symbolism which is like specific to Thelemites. So can you like without that symbolism and shit and emo girls and boys, can you actually explain to me what it's all about?
Absolutely. So, what I usually tell people if they're interested in Thelema is do not read the Book of the Law first. Don't do that. I will actually recommend if anybody is interested in learning about Thelema, Aleister Crowley's The Vision and the Voice. I would recommend reading that one first, or just reading, pick up a book by Lon Milo Duquette, who is a ceremonial magician and a Thelemite initiate also. But the reason for, so like my take on what Thelema is it is a magical system that was created by Aleister Crowley in the Victorian era. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is during the time when the Golden Dawn was past its heyday. You know, the Golden Dawn had a heyday at like the late 19th century or the late 1800s. But around the time that Crowley went to Cairo, Egypt, and spent 3 days writing the Book of the Law, around that time, his revelation was more about a new Aeon was approaching. So that's a new Aeon, a new time for spirituality, a new time for magic. And what the new Aeon meant for me was that personally is that up until the Golden Dawn, because one thing to keep in mind is that when the Golden Dawn was considered modern magic back during that time in the Victorian era. That was like, maybe this is not a good example, but the Golden Dawn in the late 18th century, in the late 20th century, I get that mixed up, was sort of like the gallery of magic today, or what modern magic is now. They took the best of Hermeticism, they took the best of Kabbalah, and just kind of packaged it with a little bit of Enochian, and they made like a good structured system. But one of the mistakes that a lot of magical fraternities have is it's not so much the grade structure, but is the people that are involved in that. And we're talking about human egos. So Crowley kind of represented, well, not Crowley himself, but the system of Thelema represented a new era in magic, a new era in spirituality, a new era in a person finding their true will, because that's what Thelema is all about. It's about finding one's true will, which do what thou wilt be, O the law. It doesn't mean do whatever you want, but it just means doing what your own unique expression of the universe is itself. You know, hopefully that's not too much rambling, but making some sense out of that. So with all the different meters that he would write in the Book of the Law, how it sounded kind of mysterious, and it sounded sort of like it was encoded with something. All it really was in its core, it's only 3 chapters, and the Thalibic deities, Nuit, Hadit, Ra-Hur, Quit, they were just representatives ushering in the new Aeon. So it sounds very mysterious on paper. It sounds very encoded on paper, but really it's not that mystical. All it really is saying is that whatever Crowley chose to channel, whatever that was, whether it was Ayahuasca's holy guardian angel, or whether it was just him tripping on some kind of psychedelics in a desert in Egypt, whatever it was, whatever he wrote down in simple point, it was just, you know, the old stuff is gone, the old day is gone, the new time has come now. We don't, you know, the Aeon of Osiris, which was the previous Aeon, was like Christianity. It was Muhammad, and nothing's wrong with those things per se. But the Aeon of Osiris represented the like sacrificial God. You know, God like dying for you, and you know that sort of. What do you guys say in Hinduism? You call it. I know I'm blanking out right now. Bhakti, like bhakti devotion. You know, and then like the new Aeon is more realizing yourself as divine. So that's what that really means. All that rambling I was just saying was just really just to say that, like Book of the Law, the Thelema, the whole point of it is knowing that you yourself are divine. That makes sense?
Yeah. But what I wanted to say is like, I get, you know, that symbolism of Nuit, Hadit, and Ra or Quit. If I am not wrong, you can correct me. Nuit is the mother. Hadit is the core of the Divine Mother, or the burning disk. And the Rakor, which is not, Hadit is not necessarily the core, but he is like a burning disk, right? He is and the Rahor Quit is like the child, the young,
Yeah,
right? So
something like that.
So Nuit and Hadith, they like together unify and create Ra or Quit with like the child of New Aeon, and it's like logical if you think about it. So the only figure I don't kind of understand, and I have dilemmas around in Thelemic cosmology, is Hadith, because is Hadith the male principle, or is Hadith the burning divine within everyone, which, when unified with Nuit, Divine Mother gives the enlightened God, aka Ra or Quit, or is Hadith, just the sun? That was like a dilemma for me. But in general, I kind of more or less understand what it's all about. But what I don't understand is like, I read those Thelemic articles and I read those magicians from the order, and like, I don't understand a single word of what they are saying. I mean, I read it back in the day 3 years ago. Maybe if I read it right now, I would understand, but back then I didn't. But fuck that. How you think Thelemic magic differs from all other magics you did?
How's Thelemic magic differ from the other magic that I did?
Yeah.
Well, so when I first started doing magic, I did what like a lot of people probably start out doing, which is more folk magic. So things that are more closer to Wicca or pagan magic. So Wiccan magic obviously has some ceremonial types of elements to it, and then pagan magic can have ceremonial elements and also much more like folk magic, being like elements, herbs, things like that. So in the beginning, before I started doing the Thelemic system of magic or ceremonial magic or ritual magic, I don't even know what the fuck to call it half the time because all those terms are pretty synonymous. I started out with just meditation and then working with the astral plane a little bit, and then I was like, well, I want to be able to bend my reality, increase my probability when I want something. So magic for me in the beginning was all about getting what I wanted. It was all about what some would call low magic or practical magic. So that was my magic definition at the beginning. But when I started getting into the the Thelemic current, it was connecting me to research other types of magic, ritual magic like the Golden Dawn, Hermetic magic, and things like that. And I saw it as more of a way of cultivating personal and spiritual cultivation. So that's how it mainly differed. It differed because it wasn't so much about practical magic or trying to increase probability in getting something I wanted, but Thelemic magic was about uncovering my true will. So it was following what that divine spark is, which is Hadith. When you were saying about Hadith earlier, Hadith being the core of us, and that famous Crowleyan quote, "Every man and every woman is a star." The star would be Hadith. So that's how it differed. It differed in that, like, it sort of separated what practical magic or low magic was to high magic or cultivation magic. That's what it did for me. So it was like, am I doing magic because I want to get a car? I want to get something material. I want to get a partner, or am I doing magic because I want to discover my true will? For me, it became more about discovering the true will. It was just more of a system of cultivation, spiritual cultivation, not just I'm doing magic to try and control something necessarily. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that became the magic for me, though.
So, did you ever summon Ra or Quit?
Yeah, not in the beginning. There are several rituals for that. Not all of them are found in Crowley's writings because Crowley wasn't the only Thelemic writer. There are other ones. I mean, I have one right here in my office here that I've used as well. I don't know if the people can see this book. No, they can't because I got this fucking background. I'm holding a book called Tantric Thelema by Sam Webster, which is it's like the Thelemic rites in the matter of Tibetan Buddhist invocations. So that will be more like specific types of meditations. But yeah, I have some in Raw Creek for sure. Absolutely. Most definitely.
And like, are you a member of Thelemic organization, or you practice solitary?
I do solitary, so I'm not a part of the OTO or the AA or any other organization. I the whole entire time I've been a solitary practitioner. I have attended some Gnostic mass, so I have gone to gatherings. I have other friends that practice, but I'm not a member. I chose to just do a solitary.
So like, here's the thing: you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh. But like, when I was reading like about Thelema first, it wasn't like from Thelemic sources. I was like reading conservative Orthodox Christian takes on Aleister Crowley, and they were like, this guy was prophet of Satan, and he was like hosting massive orgies on those. No. Let me like retell you the article right now. Like, the article was, we had like Thelemic groups in communist Yugoslavia, like it was like 70s, 80s. And then some lunatics from those Thelemic group, obviously, because we in the Balkan Peninsula uh, carve everything in our own image. So those Thelemites in the 80s, they went into like Orthodox Church, which was empty for decades because we were communists back then, and they like demolished the church and ruined everything. And are you okay?
Yeah, that was my fiance sneezing in the background.
And kind of ruined everything. That's how article begins, and then like they were the followers of Satanist Aleister Crowley, and this guy was like possessed and shit. And like I was laughing at the article, but my can you give me like 2 minutes to relocate?
Sure.
Yeah, because I need to go into another room. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
And I will not pause the recording because
That's okay.
if I pause the recording, I will have to start all over again.
Okay. I'm gonna go close the other door. Okay. You have a really big place.
So, like, what I wanted to ask is, is there any truth to like that story about like orgies on Gnostic masses and shit? Is it like real or fantasy?
You know, it's really hard to say though, because a lot of when you read about Crowley, it was always controversy, simply because he lived in a Victorian era, not like today's time. So Victorian era England was much more conservative than it is now. When today it's a lot more secular, it's a lot more free. There's obviously a lot more integration in Europe right now from people that are Muslims, pagans. It's like it's more diverse now. So back then there was all this embellishment written about Crowley, saying that he would do all these orgies and fucking sex magic openly and all that. It's really difficult to tell. Like, I don't think there's really any modern Thelemites that truly know the answer to that. I'm going to say probably it might have happened. It wouldn't surprise me if there was something, because he was so experimental and so open with how he did
No.
things.
You kind of misinterpreted my question. Like,
Oh, I did. I'm sorry.
If you go to the Gnostic Mass, today, will you have an orgy afterwards, or will that be like naked woman holding some version of Eucharist, and then you all chant and go home? Yeah, and go home. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I totally misunderstood your question.
It's funny question, I get you.
Yeah. No, I have never seen that at a Gnostic Mass. I don't think that the OTO has, that I know of, any kind of magical rites where it will be like an orgy being done. But you do see a little bit of nudity, though. Yeah, that's a thing that there is. If I can say this openly, I mean, from what I know, the Gnostic.
Yeah, you can say so. There is a naked woman holding a Eucharist representing Babylon, and that's it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You will see that. Yeah, that is a real thing for sure. Yeah. There was a woman representing the Scarlet Woman, and she's kind of, bare-breasted, and yeah, that's something that's
naked, But like, to me, it's not like, because here is the thing. Like, let me tell you something. So I am a solitary practitioner, and nobody practices occult around me ever. So like, I don't need anyone to teach me magic. I can discover my own stuff, which you can figure out from our last interview. Mm-hmm. But like, I really hoped in that to join maybe some Thelemic order to find social community. But the reason why I was always repulsed by it is because it's like so embellished in some, like, I don't know. Like, what's your experience as somebody who attended those Gnostic masses and shit? Like, what's the atmosphere? What's the people? What's the magic?
Okay. Yeah, so when I've attended them, it's been my experiences have been pretty good. For the most part, I was close to joining the OTO back then, when I got introduced to this, but I think for personal reasons, I decided not to, not because I don't agree with the OTO or what they stand for and things like that. I just wasn't interested in doing a grade structure. I've already done, initiations in my life from other practices and had teachers in other practices, and I just felt like I felt like I can get a lot further doing a solitary. I didn't really need to, but my experiences have been pretty positive. Like I have noticed outsiders coming into the masses, to the Gnostic masses, and being rather turned off by it. Like there's people that come in, they don't know what they're getting into, and they turn around, they walk out right in the middle of it. I've seen that. I've seen people that were Freemasons who, come from traditions that have a really long current and very powerful magic as well. They're used to grade structures, and they're used to the whole lodge format, and they get turned off by it too, because it may be too saturated for them, and then after the ceremony, people are like kind of talking and engaging with one another, and it seems like the OTO Thelemites are just trying to clear up the air a little bit into what they have just witnessed. So my initial experience have been pretty positive. I find that a lot of the people that are in the OTO tend to be somewhat well-read occultists. One thing I like about Thelema as a whole, though, is that it's very diverse. Like no two people practice exactly the same. Even if people just use the same structures of magic, they do them very differently. Some people might be more into other practices like Buddhism or Wicca, but they're Thelemites. They go to the OTO, and other ones might be more into like the left-hand path stuff. They may be Luciferians or Solomonic magicians, things like that. So, but anyway, answering your question, my personal experiences have always been pretty good. Just a lot of there's always a lot to learn. There's always a lot to see. I just notice other people's experience not being quite like mine, though.
So if you can summarize, what's the goal of Thelemic magic?
The goal of Thelemic magic is one thing and one thing only, and that is discovering your true will. And what your true will is, again, many people, outsiders, really misunderstand what that means. Do what thou wilt shall behold the law. A lot of people hear that in English and think it just means I can do whatever I want to do. Not really. It doesn't mean you have the license to go, you know, do something fucked up to somebody or whatever, but it is all about discovering your true will. And what your true will is sort of like in Eastern practices when they say dharma. What is your dharma? Your will is the same in the Western ceremonial magic context. So it is finding out who you are in this life, in this incarnation, what you're supposed to do, what you're meant to do, and how to follow that path, your own path. So when it says every man and every woman is a star, my personal interpretation of that is that every man and every woman is God incarnate, or you are divine. So to sum it all up, that's what the magic is all about. It's about uncovering your true will for yourself and staying the most true, no matter how that looks to anyone else, because it's not about anyone else. It's all about you. It's all about your own personal practice, how you do it. It's all about your life, because you are the God of your universe in the end. And in the end, that's really what you are.
But okay, so that's what Thelema is about, according to you. But what are your experiences with Rah or Quit?
Ooh. Wow. Well, my experiences are nothing less than unconventional. So my experiences of Raw or Queen could be anything from in times where I felt my most empowered from doing certain rituals, but it also translates to times where I wasn't doing any rituals whatsoever, and I was just going to work or living life and just seeing my own internal power as I do something. I practice martial arts longer than I practice magic. So when I practice martial arts, there have been times where I would discover, I don't want to say like a hidden secret or something mystical, but there were times where I discovered something within martial art practice that I only heard about but never seen, and I would attribute that to Rahur Queet being activated within myself. Or I'm also a visual artist. I do artwork, paintings and drawings and things like that, illustrations. So certain times I may just have a bit of inspiration that just came out of nowhere. And I might attribute that to a working with Rahur Queet from before. So it's not so much like this outside deity that is communicating with me. Like I know when we talk about deity work, oftentimes we're talking about the evocation aspect, calling something to you, calling something to us so that we can gain some sort of gnosis out of it. Um, there is an external experience, there is an external component to that. But for me, it's a lot more internal. It manifests internal. So when I talk often about in magic how like you're the god of your own universe, a lot of people misunderstand what that means. When I say the god of your own universe, most people with a strict monotheistic background might think being the god of your universe means that you are the God of the Bible in your universe. And that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, you are the prime experiencer in your universe. It's all about you and your universe and your experiences. So Rahur Queet has really pointed to that in my practice to me, you know, by showing me that that's really what, in essence, I am Rahur Queet. You know, I don't always feel like it, but in essence, that's been my discovery, if that makes sense.
I never summoned the deity, so I don't know. So your experience is only experience here. Yeah. I found a lot of the time with other powers I summoned that they kind of all work through you. So
yes, they do.
There are like rare circumstances in which you summon spirit, and spirit like creates absurd miracles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like absurdities, but it's rare. on most occasions, spirit usually works through you and alongside you, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, even when we talk about, like with me talking about how it's all an internal aspect that these things are manifesting within you yourself, um, it doesn't discount an external experience. So like if somebody goes to summon a demon or an angel, you hear oftentimes where someone will sit in a magic circle, call for protection. They may evoke or invoke an angel. Let's just say evoking for the sake of this example. They may want to work with like Barbados or something. They do some sort of invocation. They may call the names of God. They may call, the angels for protection and things like that. And they may start to smell something, right? They smell something burning. They may get like the sensation of cold on their neck. And then they may visually see something, right? If they're using the mirror or a crystal ball, or even not, even just maybe more in the meditative state, they may visually see something, and then after the experience, they can say, "Well, yeah, I summoned Barbados or Phoenix, and I saw him, So and he communicated this to me, such and such, blah blah blah." Or it can be the same thing with angels. I've had experiences I don't talk about really too much, but where I visually have seen something, outside of me. Clearly, I've seen it, so I can't discount it if it's my experience. But even with that being said, no matter how external something appears, it's still happening within you. At the end of the day, it's all happening within you.
Yeah,
So
yeah. If you see angel during evocation externally, don't expect photographer to photograph his face.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's more than likely not going to happen anyway, But so when people say they put a lot of clout, a lot of attention on external things. Like, and I think this can be a mistake because when new occultists or new witches or magicians get into these kind of arts, they want so badly to have a physical experience. They want to see something, feel and hear something, or taste something. And it doesn't always happen because these things are very subtle. But and other world religions and practices, like let's take Buddhism, which I have a lot of experience in prior to getting into the occult and magic. Um, Buddhism would say that all of it's happening within you. That there's literally nothing outside of you at all. Like nothing. The universe is not outside of you. Even
Yeah,
so,
yeah, but like what people don't get, I get you completely. Like everything
yeah, I know you do.
within everything is within you because you are within everything and you are connected with everything, but you are simply too stupid to realize it. I get that. But
Pretty much.
there is like one thing which I kind of have to say, which is like this. So I summoned one entity from Slavic tradition. I'm not going to name,
Mhm.
and now I realize that what entities do is they don't speak to us, right? What
Mhm.
they do is they do mind manipulation. So they manipulate your mind in weird ways, which is like you have certain thoughts in your head which speak in a voice which isn't yours and tell the things you don't know. But it's not as if spirit is speaking to you externally. So during evocation, when I summoned certain spirit, he told me that it is actually possible to physically summon the entity which will create physical changes in the environment, right?
Mhm.
But that takes the level of expertise no living magician I ever met has.
Mhm.
Like when majority of people talk about physical materialization, they actually refer to attunement, which is you summon the entity, you accept the vibrations of the entity accept your energy, and then it becomes that you and entity kind of meet in between. So you physically see the entity, quote unquote, but entity is actually not physically there conversation is still like on those spiritual planes. And so what do you think about, like, what's your most intense evocation experience? Don't mention the name of the spirit or anything, just describe the experience and tell me your opinion about evocation.
Okay, so the most intense experience I've ever had is funny. I was talking to a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends today, who is also a ceremonial magician practitioner. And I had an experience where early on in me discovering these things, I had used some type of Ouija board device, I will say. Won't say exactly what it was, but something like that. And I look back on that experience now knowing that I did not use the necessary protective methods for myself, which means that my mind wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for it. And the spirit lived amongst me or dwelled amongst me for I think a period of like 2 weeks and greatly disturbed my sleep. And in one occasion, I thought I was going to die because it was, I would wake up in my astral body, not my physical body, and I can feel it trying to, like, I can say possess me somewhat. It's funny. I really haven't talked about this to anybody, you know, too much, but it was greatly disturbing my sleep for a number of nights. And then I had like what I ended up doing was I had taken control of my own power at that moment, realizing that I made a mistake by doing this, and then cutting myself from it, and haven't had any problems with this since. And this is many years now, you know. But that was the most. Hopefully, I wasn't too vague with that by describing that. But that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that was my most intense experience for that.
So, like, what's your kind of opinion? What makes evocation more effective? Is it circles, triangles, correct names of power? What makes it tick according to your opinion? According to
I think it's a combination of a person's willingness to call the spirit first. So just a person's willingness and intention to do that, and also I hate to use this word, but their belief. I believe also, you know. So if a person wanted to, I don't know, call one of the spirits of the Goetia, or if they wanted to just call some sort of like earthbound spirit, I think that some of them are easier to call than others, depending, you know, for unless you're like an advanced magician, you've been doing it for a long time, then you know, then any of them are going to be pretty accessible, I think. But I don't really think it's so much the tools. I think that tools are more that some tools like triangles and things like that are more helpful. Like for instance, if a person wanted to call a goetic spirit, then the triangle will but make it a little bit easier because those spirits recognize those tools for thousands of years. They recognize what a triangle is. They recognize silver as an element and things like that. They recognize there's a certain frequency that they feel on a certain phase of the moon, which will make them easier to call. You know what I mean? Than like if a person just took some salt and drew a circle on the ground with the salt, like they could still it could still work with that, but the spirit themselves have to be able to recognize what they've already been used to. So that's what makes it really powerful. Is I think their frequency, if that makes sense. So what depending on what spirit a person's calling, it's what that spirit recognizes. Even not even so much what the person recognizes, because they could be a novice and not familiar with certain things. Like if a person wanted to work with a goetic spirit, they may not know anything about the floor mat, the mat that has the sigils and the drawings on there. You know, a person could just be like, all right, I read about the goetic spirits for a couple hours today, and I'm gonna go ahead and just try and call one of these spirits right now. And they could just sit there, and if they use the right tools that the spirit will recognize, it's gonna be the chances of success are gonna be a lot higher. If that makes sense.
so this is what I heard from others.
Mm-hmm.
They say that once you summon spirit once, he kind of knows who you are, and the next time it is easier. What do you think about that?
I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, that goes right with what I've already said about the tools and elements that the spirit themselves are familiar with. So because a person, at the end of the day, this is all information transfer. You communicating with me through technology is a frequency. Just like if one of us wanted to work with a certain spirit, that's a frequency. So if a person's are if they summoned a spirit one time and they want to go and do it again, the same spirit, chances are, unless they've offended that spirit, that it'd be easier for them. They've built a connection, they formed some kind of relationship and or contract with that being. So I think that's pretty accurate as well.
So my next question for you is, what do you think about chakras? Is it real? Is it contemplative? What's your take on them?
Chakras?
Yes.
Like the 7 chakras? I think chakras are real. However, I think there's a lot more to it than what we usually talk about. And obviously in early Tibetan culture, they talk about the 7 chakras as well as in India, but we both know that there's more than just 7. There are 7 main chakras within the body that correlate with aspects of consciousness and also elements. So if I would say chakras are real, and here's the if there's a such thing as elements, fire, water, air, spirit, things like that. If elements are real, if emotions are real, if correspondences are real, then why not? If wheels are real, why not chakras? Like that's for anybody that thinks they're not real, they can just, I don't like to tell people what to believe, but I just say explore for yourself. But the reason I believe in chakras also are because correspondences, like again, this has to do with information transfer and frequency, because there is this thing in the universe called frequency, and correspondence. One of the hermetic laws, as you know already. Why not chakras? Like, why wouldn't they be real? So yeah, they are real because chakras they're not just these colorful, rainbowed spinning wheels within the human body just for to look good and look spiritual. No, chakras themselves are more like they're mechanisms that connect us to different frequencies. So there's 7 main ones because each of the 7 are just connected to different frequencies. We have a frequency that's connected to what we don't see beyond the human senses, which we call the spiritual realities. We have one on the very bottom, a base, right? The red one, the Muladhara for Earth, which connects us to everything that's Earth based. And the reptilian brain can be connected to that too, because it's all about our fight or flight, survival, feeding, things like that. So yeah, if we can just look at chakras more than just these pretty spinning wheels that are just in paintings and yoga studios, and look at them more as just aspects of our own being, physical and non-physical and emotional aspects, then it's going to be more likely and more logical that they exist. So that's what I think of chakras.
So next question for you is, what you think about aliens?
Aliens?
Yeah.
Aliens. Okay. Non-terrestrial beings we're talking about now, right?
So I am talking about what people talk about in the New Age communities: star seeds, greys, reptilians.
Okay.
Pale white, tall whites and shit like that. Galactic Federation and shit.
Personally, I've heard of all those terms. I'm not that familiar with Galactic Federation because I don't really know where the information was drawn from. I know that again, this is another Thelemic term I'm throwing around, but the new Aeon here in the new Aeon, Aeon of Horus, which is this time right now, doesn't matter what you call it, just a new Aeon, new age. We are, as a collective species, learning new things all the time. We're getting new information. So, in short, I do believe in aliens. I do believe in like other forms of life that live away from Earth. Now, what exactly are they and their mission? I'm not really too sure because I've had very limited experience with such things. Um, I can disclose to you some experiences I've had with aliens, if you like, for your audience, that might give more credence to what to how I'm answering this. So I don't know exactly what you know reptilians and the Earth Star Federation and all this shit, the Syrian Council. I don't know. I mean, I have heard these things before, and from my understanding, people say that that's channeled information. I don't know who channeled it, when, how accurate it really is. I don't know. I think in the New Age community, they a lot. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them really. I I think a lot of it's bullshit, to be honest. Like a lot of people just want to sound spiritual and sound wise, so they just write something or say something. However, um, aliens do it. There are aliens. If there's human beings and animals and plants on this planet, and there's a fucking billion planets out in the universe, there's got to be life somewhere else. You know, clearly that's the case. But if you like, again, I can go into my experience with some aliens for the for the audience. Would you like me to?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So along my journey, I have discovered the benefits of psychedelics. So now we're on a different subject. I have had San Pedro ayahuasca. I've done ceremonies for off and on for years. It's been years since I've actually done it because I've gotten to a point in myself where I don't really feel like I need to do anything like that. But within those experiences, I have clearly was I don't want to say I was given knowledge from the universe or any of that shit, but I've had experience where I have seen what we would call aliens, grays or something like that. I have seen things like this before, and even before those experiences happened, I was already open to the idea of non-terrestrial life. But there was one ceremony where I was on taking ayahuasca, and I went to a ceremony, and in that ceremony I saw non-terrestrial beings because I don't know what they were. They were not from Earth, and I was able to witness them, see them, just like I'm seeing you right now. And I noticed them. They had these tools, and they were like getting inside of the people and kind of tweaking their energy centers. There was like looked like chakras. Maybe they were chakras, maybe they weren't. They were various colors, and they were like, it looked like they were just like putting lights in and removing things out. I don't know. I don't know what they were doing, but at the time I witnessed that, at the time of the experience, what I was feeling, if I can say if that was true, was that they were updating and upgrading, spiritual technology. So post experience, when I would go back and recall what I remember seeing, I was saying, yes, I saw non-terrestrial beings, non-terrestrial life, aliens, quote unquote, and they had various tools, and they were rearranging what was going on within the human vessel on an etheric and energetic level, not so much like a physical level, but it looked like they were doing surgery. So people that were in a ceremony that were just like standing up with their eyes closed, like looked like they were praying, or maybe sitting down or banging a drum. These non-terrestrial beings were moving bits of light around within the person. So, and to help them, that's all I can say about that, really. So, there's my experience, one of my experiences.
So, what's your opinion on psychedelics, and what's different between the trances you have on psychedelics and trances you have during meditation?
So psychedelics. So I have a non-unique view. I'm very pro psychedelics. However, I feel that psychedelics can give us kind of like cheat codes. It can make it easier for us to have these experiences, but I don't think that everyone should use them at the same, at a certain time, because I think that doing just my opinion, I think that using psychedelics without proper experience, without some kind of training, can affect one's discipline because it can spoil the person. You know, you take a psychedelic, you take a mushroom, you take some DMT, and the universe opens up bigger to you, and you're able to see far beyond what you ever thought you could see for just a few hours, you know, and you get this information, you get this gnosis, and it can be wonderful. And then after the experience, if the experiences are not integrated properly, the person can become too reliant on the psychedelic and not their own discipline with meditation or whatever practice that they're doing. So that could be the problem with psychedelics, which a lot of people have this problem. And like almost everybody talks about how beautiful they are and how they should be legal and the great experiences you can get from it. But most people don't talk about how to truly develop yourself beyond psychedelics or prior to doing psychedelics. So yes, I believe that psychedelics are great to use. They can be a wonderful tool. And if you are a serious magician or witch or spiritual person, at least one time in your life, if you're dedicated and you're integrated properly in your practice, I think more than likely you should, unless you have some kind of reservation about it, to try a psychedelic at some point for the experiences. But oh well, to further integrate you into your experiences as what you are. But again, I always say that most people that do them tend to like discipline. They're just like, yeah, I had this. I went down to South America, I went to Peru, and had this wonderful, blissful experiences on, you know, San Pedro or ayahuasca, and then they get this wonderful experience seeing the universe. They see stars and planets and aliens and unicorns and dragons and all this shit, and they're like, wow, this is great. You know, the universe is much bigger and much more robust than I ever thought it could be, which means that I'm a part of that, and this is great. And then like 6 months later, their life is just the same as it was before. You know, they're not happy about something. They're dissatisfied about, you know, their job or their relationship, and nothing has changed. And the reason this happens is because they haven't properly integrated that experience. I mean, and the way you should integrate it is not just journaling it and saying, yes, I saw unicorns, I saw fairies, it was great. But a person should begin practicing, you know, whatever knowledge they were given. Because when you take plant medicine, the plants will tell you what you should be doing. They will recommend something for you. You know, they may say drink more water, do more meditation, stop eating so much sugar. That's just a little part of it. You know, then the rest of it might be to face your challenges in a different way or whatever. But whatever information a person's getting from plant medicine is going to be beneficial for them for years, you know. And that's my stance on psychedelics.
So, what's your opinion about like astral travel? Do you
My
know how to
opinion,
do that? Yeah.
like how to do it, or
How to do it? Did you do it? What are the benefits of it, dangers of it, etc.? Like, let's talk about it if you want.
yeah, sure, okay. Astral travel is a real phenomenon. So just like we can travel within our thoughts, just like we can travel physically, you know, we can travel like away from our body. It's a very real phenomenon. It's something that human beings have been doing for thousands of years. I think, like psychedelics, astral travel can be a very good practice. Again, I would say that there's a lot of preparation to be done, you know, like learning to do things like recall your dreams, just knowing about the four bodies that exist, you know, knowing that we have a body that's made out of pure emotions. We have a body that's, everybody knows the physical body. We know that we have some kind of like mental body. You know, not everybody is familiar with what exactly that is, but knowing those different four bodies and knowing that they exist is a starting point. Is, in my opinion, it's not as difficult as most people make it out to be. It's just kind of going beyond the boundaries of our notions about it. So there can be some dangers to it as well. You know, there have been times in my experience where I would journey someplace, so to speak, and I wouldn't know where I was at. I had no clue. I would be seeing some kind of symbols around me, some kind of entities or whatever, and I didn't know what they were or how I even got there. But I ended up becoming quite good at reeling myself back to my starting point, to my base point, which is the physical body where everything's integrated and stuff. So I was pretty lucky that way. I didn't have a teacher tell me what to do or how to do any of that. Um, the only real dangers I see on about astral travel is the fact that if a person doesn't use their intent or will enough when they're out exploring the universe, they may find themselves in kind of a challenge where they may end up being as some part of the lower astrals because as physical beings and spiritual and astral beings that we are, there are limits. We cannot go to like what Christians would call heaven from where we are right now. We won't do that. For us to do that, we have to have an experience where our physical body gets cut off. You know, maybe if you're like hiking the Mount Everest, and a cold wintry night and you have hypothermia and you come this close to dying, you may end up having an astral experience going to like what may be like almost an afterlife because your physical body is being cut off. That can happen. That's what we call a near death experience. When you hear about near death experiences, that's what's happened. The line that keeps the physical and the astral together gets temporarily cut. And then the awareness, which is you, the hadith, use that word again, ends up witnessing like your continued life beyond the physical body and beyond the physical world. So those could be the dangers. So it's all really about like I hate to use this word grounding, but grounding the body. And what I mean by grounding the body is making sure that the body itself is in a safe, secure area that's not going to be disturbed by anything, where your elements are balanced, that you're not too cold, you're not too hot, things like that. So it won't propose a danger, but yeah, there's little dangers to it.
So, what do you think about like you in Thelema, guys? You work with the Tree of Life. So, what do you think about soul traveling to certain spheroids, or what do you think about spheroids? What's your experience with them?
So I tend to do it from time to time. We using angels of the Tree of Life, angels in the Sephiroth. That's how I've done it, and the reason I would do it that way would be to as a way of integrating myself. Because just like the chakras, those are also mental and emotional aspects of yourself as well. That's in Sephiroth. They all are. If we're talking about, for instance, for anybody in the audience that's not that familiar with the Tree of Life, I mean, I'm sure your audience is pretty intellectual, so I'm sure most of them know already what they are. But for the sake of a few that may not be that familiar, when you look at the Tree of Life, which doesn't look like a real tree, in the bottom there's Malkuth, the kingdom, or it's more of the physical plane. So I'm just going to use this for an example. So when working with that, you will be working with Archangel Saldapan. Saldapan is an archangel that's very earth connected. So that's kind of like working with the root chakra, but I would say a little bit different because it's angelic. So my experiences of that will be each of those, since they are a part of our emotional centers as well, I would use that as a sense of integrating myself so I can feel a little bit more whole as possible, since everything in spiritual practice is about balance. So going back to the example of Saldapan, if I'm having like a time in my life where I'm lower in money, and I want to have more knowledge of how to better use the wealth I do have, I will intentionally focus more on the Malkuth and then raise that up to another Sephiroth, if that makes sense. Like, so that's kind of how my experiences are all really about that. I work with a tree of life that way. And with other Thelemites I've spoken to, that's how it's been as well.
So, like, what do you think about? What's your personal opinion? This is like last question because I have to go. But what's your opinion on like what I wanted to say? Fuck me.
It's
Like,
okay.
what do you think about Alistair's Crowley magic in theory and practice? Like, I tried to and magic without tears. Like, I tried to read the book twice. I failed every time. It seems too unnecessarily abstract for me, and I don't have time to read it. So, what do you think about those two books?
I mean, not some of his material. Be honest, like I resonate more with certain writings of his. I haven't read all his writings because he has so much stuff that's published. What I tend to do with his work is I'll read one book and just kind of reread it and reread certain parts and kind of integrate it. The way I integrate it is I try to practice it. I just try it out. Try it out, see if it works. Getting into this particular current, for me, it was like, well, there's all these different magical exercises that are written. People talk about Libra Resh and Libra 25, and all these different ones. I'll just go and find the sources where they came from, and I'll just practice those. But my opinion really on those is like I didn't find them to be too dry. Personally, I found them to be quite great, but I would never start with those if I was getting into this. I wouldn't be just like Book of the Law. Like I wouldn't start with that either. It's going to sound like a bunch of rambling. Some of his writings were he was as good of a writer as Crowley was. His stuff is definitely not. You definitely have to have a certain temperament to even get it, to be even interested in it, though. You don't have it doesn't mean that one has to be a very smart intellectual person. I just think that it would help if the person already has some kind of occult background before getting into any of his work. Like if you work with the Golden Dawn current, or if you work with the Corpus Hermetica or some other grimoire, you get familiar with something else, and then you find his work later. It makes it easier than just going, I was a Catholic 6 months ago, and now I want to read about Thelema. It's just going to be quite confusing for a person. And that's my thoughts on that.
So, yeah, like my last question is actually, I will not have any more questions for you because I'm pretty tired and I got to go. But I really want to have a next episode soon about your other experiences in other traditions.
Absolutely. I will be so
yeah,
down for that, man, anytime.
yeah,
Thanks for
yeah.
having me on.
So thank you for coming and talk to you soon.
All
Bye,
right, for sure.
Roderick. Yeah, bye.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.